and talk about annotating sources. And if I did it right, Tuesday, February 6th, the topic is annotation, and the workshop that we're going to begin right now is annotation in Tiddlywiki, and the exercise is 401. So that should have come through, so I kind of move things around a little bit. But as you can, as Chris pointed out, I screw it up and forget the dependencies sometimes. So okay. So I have a 3-line presentation. Okay. Because I wanted you to use the opportunity to collect some stuff and build some content, and then write, of course, a Tiddlywiki about annotation and one article. And it's very meta, right? You're going to annotate you're going to annotate some stuff about annotation. You've been doing annotations forever. How and why do we annotate? Yeah.
To give somebody more information without disrupting the flow of text.
So you're thinking then you're projecting out annotations that you're going to write for an audience that's other than you. How and why do we annotate for ourselves, for our own knowledge and utility and edification? And when and where? So give me an example in your life when you might annotate something. And this is nothing to do with, maybe it has nothing to do with computers, maybe it does, maybe it's on your phone, maybe it's just, where do you engage in this practice of adding a note of exclamation or comment? Where do you add to things that others have made? Do you do that? Like, not like when could you, but when do you? When do you annotate in your life? Ever? Does anybody ever read stuff that they're assigned to in class? Take notes on it? Highlight it? No. Where else do you annotate? Pardon? Give me, you're verbally, you mean? Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, we can't do that. Because so Eric suggested that one form of annotation is what we could call verbal. I repeated that so it gets on the recording, is a verbal annotation. I'm interested here in things that are recorded and captured, not fleeting, not one-offs that just come out of your mouth and disappear into the ether. Because that's not an annotation, we can't go back and see it again. So when do you annotate, or how do you annotate things that you might need to use again? And maybe you don't, I don't know. Does anybody ever like things so that they can find them again, or star things in their Gmail so they can find them again, or reply back to a message? That's sort of annotation. Like if I change my password, I shouldn't tell you this because it's really bad security practices. But if I change my password, especially on some stupid site, you get the email saying, oh, okay, you can click this link to change your password. I might reply to that message, save it in my drafts with my new password. I mean, that's really bad practices, right? In other words, if you can get into my email, you can probably get all of my passwords because I don't know where else to keep them. And my password manager attempts fail.
Steve, yeah. I can't see your screen.
What's that?
I can't see your screen.
Why not?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe I'm not sharing. You should have alerted me to that, which you just did.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were doing something else, just getting ready for it.
No, I'm ready. Go ahead, Steve. Why would you do that? Now he's interested in my password practices.
No, I said, what happens when you forget your email password?
I'm in deep trouble. But you can get it. I mean, it's a cascade. It's called a series of cascading errors.
Also, another stat of why we annotate.
Yeah.
When we read things, they're written from the writer's point of view, and they may or may not necessarily look at things the way we do. So annotations help us understand it a little bit more the way we do.
So Steve thinks annotation, you might annotate to improve your understanding. Okay, so is it the act of annotating that improves your understanding, or the act of reading your annotations at some future point that improves your understanding? So Jillian thinks both, that the actual act of annotating, so you're reading and you interrupt the flow of your reading to write something, to memorialize a thought that's in your brain, like, oh, I think this is that, or my interpretation of what I'm looking at is this. So you memorialize that. It interrupts your flow of reading as a passive reader. I would argue that that transforms you temporarily into this odd state as a writer, but you're really engaged in what's called active reading. You're adding your thoughts, and instead of letting them just sit in your brain, you're capturing them. So if you had a recorder that could capture the thoughts of your brain and translate them to tiddlers automatically, then you wouldn't need to write this stuff down. So when you're reading, whatever's thinking in your brain is going to get added to that text. But we're not going to get to that point this semester in our technology, so we have to do it manually, right? That was kind of funny. You could have laughed. Although maybe you're afraid, wait. I mean, we could have like a little brain scan, right, that captured your thoughts and record. But okay, no, that's at least Web 3.0 before we embed those. So in the meantime, we have to do it by hand. So when you're reading something, you might want to add your knowledge or your understanding or your questions or your lack of knowledge or your reflections or whatever your thoughts are. You might want to add that to the document you're reading. And then you can go back and look at that document plus your annotations again in the future and have the benefit of your understanding of the moment. Okay, so tomorrow, if you read something today and you refresh your memory about it tomorrow, your annotations will be there. Tomorrow you'll probably remember. Next week it fades, and in 2 weeks you'll have no concept of it again. So your annotations will be really beneficial because you won't have to reconstruct your understanding again. When would you do this in your student/professional life? When would you be called upon to absorb information and capture your understanding or knowledge of that information for future reference? When would you need to do that? In what scholarly, because you're a student, you're scholars, in what student role or what professional role? Derek, when do you think you'd ever do this? What do you want to be if you grow up?
Question.
Yeah, like just pick a job. A PR manager. When would a PR manager that Derek wants to be, if he ever grows up, it's an open question. When would a PR manager ever be called upon to memorialize her understanding of a particular document?
When looking over someone's speech, right?
So you're going to be a PR manager. Who are you going to work for? Pardon? Yeah, but who do you want to hire you today? Google. So you're going to be the PR manager for Google. When would Derek ever need to annotate? Yeah.
But using a historical example, when Ronald Reagan was going to give a speech in front of the Berlin Wall, his PR department basically told him, whatever you do, don't say tear down the wall. That is an act of aggression.
You've lost me.
Never mind.
That's okay. When would he need to annotate? What's the job of Google's PR manager? So if I Google and look in the news for Google, okay. And so I'm going to come back to the Reagan because I think I'm beginning to understand your example. Okay. One of the jobs of the PR manager might be to monitor news about Google. Okay. So if, Derek, you see this, what do you do with that as a PR manager?
Probably scan through it, find the negative aspects that the article is listing,
Mm-hmm.
and find a way to make sure that people understand that,
Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up.
positive,
And who would you share that with?
consumer themselves, so probably direct it to like the marketing team.
So if you were to tweet this, to share it with the rest of the world, would you add your own thoughts about it? Okay, that's a form of annotation. Whenever you share a link and add your own thoughts about it, you're effectively annotating that page. So if I tweet this, if I can find the, strange that there's no share links, right? So I'll do it manually. And I paste the link. I've not annotated, I've just shared the link. But if I add my own thoughts, what would this, anybody have Google Home? Anybody have an Alexa speaker? Do you have Alexa? Pardon? So Google or Alexa?
Alexa.
Okay. You have to plug it in, right? You can't carry it around with you? What is the last device that was invented that was tethered? Why is Google tethering devices? Why has Google created Google Home that's tethered, that's fixed in the same space, that you can't carry it around your house? Yeah.
Reliable.
Come on. What do you mean? This thing is reliable? It's not reliable because it's plugged in, is it?
But if generally when you go cordless, you have a 50-50 chance of these things not talking to each other.
Okay. But we're talking Google. I take your point, but why do they, I don't know. Anyway, if I were to add a point that this is really cool because for some reason Google Home is a tethered device in a sea of wireless devices. I don't know why they tether. The first thing I did with my Google Home when I plugged it in, said, this is really cool. I can say, hey, Google, play music. And then I wanted to go upstairs to my room, and I wanted it to come with me. But it was plugged in. So I couldn't believe it didn't run on battery. It was so strange. And it cost $39 to get a battery. So I'm creating an annotation here. And I don't really need to send it. That's, how would I do this? I do this for my friends. I do this to be social. I add my own understanding of things. How would I do this that's like, where else would I want to do this? Derek, what would you do as the PR manager for Google?
So what else would I do with that? News article?
Yeah. Like, who's going to be interested in that? At Google. Who cares about the fact that CNET is talking about, hey, there's this really cool thing. don't you think the engineers at Google who made this decision somewhere along the line to tether Google Home you might want to draw their attention to that? So you might tag the article with, I don't know what, portability, right? If you're tracking all of the news coverage of the Google Home and 30% of it is talking about the lack of portability, that would flag for Derek as the PR manager at Google, say, maybe this is an issue. And he'd know that because he'd tag all the stories with portability. And so through tagging, you're actually adding some knowledge and understanding. That's a form of annotation as well, when you tag something to a shared concept. Yeah.
Take it out of your home.
It's what it is? It's a smart speaker. And you might begin to say, and you're right, I've been thinking about this since Christmas when I got my Google Home. Because to me, this is total diversion, but to me, Google Home is or the smart speaker, Alexa, Google Home, Apple doesn't have one yet, is a revolutionary product. Probably on the same scale, in my view, as the iPod. And if you think about it, iPod was radically different. It transformed the way that we dealt with music in so many ways. It was a terrible interface. That little dial-y thing sucked. I mean, the old original iPods, they were really sucky in some ways. But compared to what we had before, it was, it replaced the iPod replaced the Walkman, personal music. You never, because you're too young. Walkman was a device, it was a portable CD player or a portable cassette tape player. The CD players sucked because they were too bouncy. But the tape players were really good, but you had to carry around your media. So the iPod separated the media from the device. So you didn't have to carry around. So it was transformed the way that people listen to music and moved them from albums to singles and all sorts of stuff. The Google Home is the first computer/robot that we control with our voice. And it's insane that you can control a robot with your voice. You can say, hey, Google. You can wake up and say, hello, Google. And Google Home can respond however you'd like, but it will say, oh, today is such and such. The weather's this. This is the top of the news. Whatever. It's a robot. And you don't have to use your hands to touch it. And so you can just do it with your voice. And it does amazing things, but it's not portable. And you might say, well, if you want a portable robot, that's called a phone. And your phone should be able to do everything that Hey Google can do, or that Google Home or Alexa can do, but it doesn't. So it's an intriguing difference to me about why it's tethered. I think one of the reasons it might be tethered, but you're going to tell me why? Oh, is so I buy another one to put upstairs. I think.
Well, they sell them in 3-packs now.
They sell, yeah, because you need them. You want them in different places in your house. It's a speaker. You want speakers in every room. But it just surprises me that it hadn't occurred to me that it wasn't wired. And it was that realization that was interesting. So, but for $39, you can buy a battery and carry it around your house. Yeah, and I'm also unusual in that I don't run it off of I guess I do run it. I run it off of a hotspot, which is a little weird because I don't have real internet. So, but it still doesn't explain why it would be tethered. I want it in the car. So Google Car will show up pretty soon. It will do the same as Google Home. But anyway, okay. So the notion of annotation, the idea is that you have incoming information, you process it in some way, you read it, you memorialize your thoughts about it by writing sentences, paragraphs, bullet points, comments, yellow stickies. Like you guys, in the olden days, you might have torn out a newspaper article and put a yellow sticky on it, and put it in an envelope with a stamp and mailed it to someone. In professional work environments, you still get lots of Xeroxes with yellow stickies. or people will write something and make a copy, or they'll mostly what they do is they forward you a link with some commentary. Okay, and that's a very standard practice of annotation that you engage in all the time. I think I would suggest you do. Students, I would hope, read and interpret the materials that they're reading in the framework of their class. I don't think we teach you enough of that. I think, in fact, that we college faculty are somewhat deficient in that. We just say, read this, and we might interpret it in our presentations, or we might draw the connections for you, but we never ask you to explicitly do that. I'm going to ask you to do that a little bit for the practice of annotation, for the practice of creating interactive texts, and to see if this process of high-level reading, energetic reading, engaged reading, active reading, to see if this process actually helps you learn. And if it does, then the writing that you'll be doing will be, you'll be writing, engaging in the act of writing in order to think. Usually you write to perform, you write for an audience, for someone else, but now you're writing for yourself. You're writing to think, because you're going to learn and gain knowledge and understanding of the world by engaging in the act of writing. And then I blow the whole thing by saying, well, show me your thinking. Show me what you did. Oh, that's my thinking, but yeah, you got to see it. So you're also writing to perform. So this is a different way of approaching what hypertext is, and what this concept of annotation is. So let me come back to my, so Wikipedia, of course, and I use Wikipedia a lot for all sorts of reasons, but Wikipedia, of course, has an article on annotation, which you could read, and which you could reverse engineer mechanically. Or you can read it and actively tag it with another framework, another way of thinking. That's what I'm going to suggest we do. But you can talk, it shows you how students engage in annotation, how in learning instruction we use annotation, how software writers who document their code, that's a form of annotation. If you're engaged in any kind of software development environment, if you want to be a game designer, you're going to work with other people. There's your code, and then there's your explanation of the code. Those are annotations. And then when somebody's looking at your code and they can't get it to work, they might write their own. So, and that's a exchange of information. So you're going to end up engaging in this practice. You might not do it with the exact $, angle brackets, curly braces that we're using, but the techniques are going to be the same. I'm sorry, the practices are going to be the same. The techniques will be different. So we've got the Wikipedia article, and I did this, which is an interesting approach as well, if you think about it. So when you look at this link tomorrow, it may be different than it is today, because I'm linking you to a live web page. That's a Google search. And so it's going to return the query. When you hit that query, you may get different results than I get. Okay, why would that be, by the way? Why would you get a different set of results than I'm going to get on this query? Or if I go to Google News, if I just search for annotation practices, your results may be different than mine. It's based off of who I am, right? Because I'm logged in, so it knows. So Google is serving me. They are, right? They're giving me they're going to be tailored to me, right? By building a link to a live query, if you think about it, I'm writing something that is going to allow the reader to get results that's going to be tailored to them. So it's kind of, it's a strange level of writing links to write open-ended queries. You're basically writing a query into a big database and saying to your reader, you may be interested in the results that you get. We're not going to look at the results that I'm getting. Okay. What I'd like you to do, though, is pick out some of those interesting articles. I can go back to it. To me, you're probably going to look at towards an ecology of hypertext annotation. Does anybody ever use Google Scholar? Do you use it all the time? Anybody? So some of you have never seen it? Okay. And we're going to look at this, and we're going to look at some library resources as well. We're going to look at the library databases. But Google Scholar has a bunch of hypertextual features, not surprisingly, right? So you can mark things as your favorites and come back to them. You can get the citation. Looks to me like this kind of thing, and just pick a format. We're not going to focus on it, but this kind of text looks to me like it's useful to paste into a tiddler, right? Because you've got a citation to it. You can put it in a field of a tiddler if you want, like source or citation, and then you can generate a bibliography from that. So you might want to work on that structure. It's got links to the live articles, which you can then save. And it tells you, to go back to it again. Sorry, I'm lost in tab. Okay, and it tells you how many articles have cited that article. Okay, what's it mean to be cited? What does that give you a clue about? So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Pardon? Yeah, if it's cited, it's a good thing. Is it like, so the more citations, does that make the article, that's a measure of how useful others who write articles have found this article. Okay? Cited by like 400, cited by 6,000, cited by 9. Okay, and it's also a feature of how long it's been out there. Because if it's brand new, it's not going to be cited very often. If it's very old, it might have been. So it just gives you a clue as to how important it might be. And more importantly, you might, oh, who else has written about an ecology of hypertext annotation? And so sometimes going to those citations are going to yield interesting articles for you. So what I'm interested in is asking you to track down a little bit of literature, and we'll discuss how much that should be now, because we're going to write the rules of the exercise. We're going to write the instructions together. I'm interested in having you explore this concept of annotation, track down a couple of articles, and then I want you to think about it in terms, I'm sorry, let me back up. I want you to do the same thing for 1 or 2 articles about hypertext. So maybe 2 articles on annotation, 2 articles on hypertext. And then think about those 3 or 4. If you only do 2 to start with, that's fine. Think about them in terms of the words that we're using to describe hypertextual practices. Okay? Those 5 words that I've been saying over and over again, and I try to say them in different order every time. I don't know if you've noticed that I do that consciously. But templating and transcluding and linking and tagging and listing, right? Those 5. That collection of 5 words is well, you're the only ones who have to hear it. But so that's my contribution to the scholarly literature on hypertext, that set of 5. And I'm not sure that those are the right ones. So I'm very interested in if you come up with other ones, or if you think that some of them are subsumed, because we want a list of 5 distinctive practices, but I want you to find ideas or thoughts in these articles and associate them with one of those 5 words or 2 of those 5 words. Yeah, good question.
You gotta call it
The full house of hypertext?
Full house of hypertext.
Why is it the full house of hypertext?
3 keys, full house.
3 T's and 2 L's. Okay.
That's how I remember what I'm forgetting.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I actually never knew that. I used to call, if you look back at some of the last year's classes, which you can find if you dig it, not that you're really that interested, but it's out there. But I think I used to call listing filtering instead of listing. I don't know if filtering is better than listing or not. But yeah, and I think I've had linking and tagging for a long time, and transcluding came earlier, and it was only very recently that in the past year or so, that I realized that templating is its own behavior. So it will be interesting to me if people, if you can find examples. When people talk about annotation, to me, when they say the yellow sticky pad, you know what I'm talking about, the yellow stickies, right? Those are ubiquitous. Those are a form of annotation. Those are a tool for annotation. Are they about linking? Tagging? You could use yellow stickies to tag. Yeah, okay. As a template, they're kind of cool. There's different shapes and sizes. There's different templates, so you can get little kits that have all different colors. You can go wild with the physical aspects of this, and that would be fun to see you do. Okay, so I didn't write instructions because I wanted to generate this, and I want to move the whole class towards you're starting to generate your own assignments. So the transitional way to do that is to generate the assignment in somebody else's weekly, so somebody else can drive. I'm going to stop my share. Somebody volunteer. Somebody who's in there. Andrew, you want to drive? I don't think you've driven for us lately. Have you ever driven for us? You have. Who's never driven in class? Who's never driven? Margaret, you've never driven. Oh, you can. Go to Design Right and search for Zoom Room.